There is no official diagnosis for post-graduation depression. No research, no formal studies. And I think there's a lot of research about depression and anxiety among college students, and I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to lecture you on that or give you textbook definitions of what that is or what that feels like. I'm here to talk about depression after graduation. And it's a topic that is not spoken about in university, hence making it difficult to recognize, especially by someone that has never suffered from mental illness before. So I graduated from high school without absolutely no idea of what I wanted to study. I juggled around with the idea of psychology, and I took a couple classes here in UTEP. But I always had a lot of curiosity for the arts. So I decided to take one class to take the edge off. And that was it. You know, I answered, you know, what it is that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to be someone creative. And it's a very big jump, I feel, from high school to university. It's a lot of new experiences and new feelings. You know, we're coming into a university and we're meeting new people, we're making new friends, losing old friends, we're finding ourselves, we're going through heartbreak and finals and advisors, and it can be a lot. So I graduated, I made it in 2010, and I wanted to do a master's. That was always something that I wanted to do, something that was always in my horizon, but I wanted to take a couple of years in between. University was much, you know, and I know a couple of friends that did their masters right after bachelor's, like they graduated in April and then did their masters in August, and props to them, because girl, university is rough. And I in particular needed that 2-year gap between my undergrad and my graduate. And during these 2 years, I thought to myself, you know, if I'm going to do grad school, then I was going to do it right. If I was going to apply to grad school, I was going to apply to the best art and design school in the world, the Royal College of Art, which was my dream school since I realized that I wanted to be someone creative. And so I applied, and I think I was much more resilient back then, because I was living under this mentality that, you know, the worst thing that can happen is nothing. You know, the worst thing that can happen is for you to stay in the exact moment where you are now. And for some reason, that was less terrifying than not even trying to begin with. You know, less terrifying than living with a what if. So I applied and I got accepted. And I moved to London for 2 beautifully magical years. And I was creative in a way that I had never been before. I was surrounded constantly by innovative people, creative people that had worked just as hard to be where I was, where we were. And so I graduated 2 years later, and this question resurfaced again, this question of who I was going to be for the rest of my life. And this time it had more weight to it, more meaning, because this time I wasn't working towards a master's, I wasn't working towards a degree. You see, the question of who I wanted to be for the rest of my life was for me and me only. And that was a little terrifying to answer for me. So I decided to come back home after half a decade of being away from it, and a lot of things happened in 5 years. I was no longer the same person that had left. But my family had established different routines, which is only normal. My friends, you know, that I came back because I was craving this social support. My friends from high school had either gotten married, started to have kids, moved away, or started their doctorate. So it was kind of a bigger shock than I was expecting to come back home. You know, I thought I was going to come into this bubble of warmth. And it turns out that I was kind of confused of what home was. So with this, of course, you know, it resulted in I guess, a deep feeling of displacement. It seemed like I was taking these steps backwards. I came back home for a reason, for this social support that I didn't find. And I felt extremely disorganized, both creatively and monetarily, so much so that the little money that I had left from grad school, I blew off in 6 months, because what acts as a better distraction than alcohol and partying? So much so that I had to start waitressing again. And not that there's anything wrong with that. That got me through my bachelor's, and that allowed me to pay for rent and materials, among other things. But I had promised myself that after my master's, I wasn't going to do that anymore. And here I was, with a diploma from the best art and design school in the world, asking if you wanted a salad with that. And that hit my ego really hard. Again, it seemed like another step backwards. And so here I was, back home, refusing to make anything new or asking for help, because I had no idea that I was going through this. I had no idea that I was depressed, because you see, the word depression has a zillion connotations attached to it. I imagine someone that's depressed, and I imagine someone that's in their room with the lights off and, having trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. And you see, I was doing the exact opposite of what I knew depression to be. I was overly social. I was traveling. I was exercising. I was pretty much doing everything to distract me from the fact that I wasn't where I thought I would be. And what is so confusing for me about all of this is that I had no idea that I was going through this. My friends didn't know, my family members didn't know. How could they? I didn't. And I think educational institutions do a really good job in painting this beautiful picture for their students. We've won half the battle because we're here, right? And attending university and graduating is 100% something to be celebrated, totally. But I think here we're really focused in acing that exam and in graduating in the top of our class, because that, in theory, is a testament of who we are, right? If that in theory, if we graduate with good grades, then our employer is going to see our efforts, right? And they're going to hire us. But you see, the thing is that there is hundreds other people that want the exact same thing that you do, the exact same job position, the exact same salary. And so I stood still, because I didn't know better. I didn't know that I needed help or where to ask for help. And now that I speak about it with my friends, everyone's like, oh my God, I was going through this. Why didn't we talk about this? And that's the thing, since it's not something that is mentioned in university, it's just something that's just hits you like a bus when you graduate. And then I started thinking about my definition of success. Why wasn't I not feeling successful? And I forgot that the definition of success evolves. So I think I didn't realize that. I forgot to catch up. And it is very easy to confuse your definition of success for other people's definition of success. It will never be the same. Success is relative. Success changes. And I didn't realize that. So then I took a step backward. And I thought, okay, so theoretically or realistically, say I had failed. I had to start from square one. I had to start over. Then this pressure that I felt on my shoulders suddenly felt unnecessary. Because you see, I had started over. I had reached the bottom, and you see, you can't fall from the bottom, right? So I started again in my eyes. I found the social support that I was craving because I made new friends that had gone through the same thing, that were interested in being creative and doing innovative things. And I can't say that I took depression from the root. I cannot say that it will not come back. I have absolutely no idea. But right now I feel good and I feel great. And as an alumna from UTEP, I was of course very interested and drawn to the idea of coming to speak here today. But the theme, access and excellence, I felt everything but. How was I supposed to stand up here and talk to you about access and excellence? And somehow I felt that I had to talk about my successes. You know, that I was worthy to be up here. And you see, the thing is, I think right now we have another layer that our parents or older siblings didn't have, because now we have social media, you know, a blessing and a curse all in its own. And I find myself kind of obligated to showcase my successes in my events that I'm doing, and I concentrate on this narrative that fits on a square that you can easily roll down on your Instagram newsfeed. You know, it's inevitable to compare. And it's very easy to point fingers. It is very easy to blame others for the reason that you are not where you thought you would be. And that's why I guess I was so scared once I left this institution, because I no longer had this net of support anymore. I didn't have an advisor to guide me. I didn't have someone to help me solve a technical problem. You see, if I failed, that was on me. I didn't have anybody to blame. So I refused to move forward or sideways. I was just kept taking step backs and step backs. But I can honestly say that right now I am at a point where I understand that the definition of success is relative. For me to understand that that changes. And I think once I truly understood that success is relative, I understood that the weight of my burdens were temporary. I'm here to start a platform about post-graduation depression. I'm here to talk about depression and the many faces it has. And that is something that I didn't know, that I wish I knew. Because this feeling of failure lasted for 3 years. And maybe if I had somebody to talk to, my friends that were going through the same thing, if maybe we had reached out to each other, maybe I wouldn't have felt this way so long. Thank you for listening.